Okay, this is what I've asked everybody up to now, because it's like, what's your name and who are you? But how do you see yourself?
Okay. My name is Lee Wells. I'm an artist and curator. Primarily consider myself a painter, but have kind of gotten distracted or sidetracked, if maybe with digital media since the early '90s.
And you say curator, because that's an interesting one in itself, isn't it? Because there's the artist, and then there are those that make the space for art, but often it's the same thing these days.
Well, I like to think, like a curator is a word that I kind of use just more for simplicity's sake, but there's kind of like a two-forked path where one side of it is more of like an artist organizer. Like artists in general, there's different types of artists, whereas not all really, they can make genius work, but they don't necessarily know how to take their work and bring it into whether it's the public realm or the gallery realm. So I like to think I'm a helper.
Okay.
For artists that are kind of a teacher without being in academia. And then the other side is I curate in a Duchampian sense of curating, where it's an exhibition is, in a way you could look at it as a ready-made, with the artists attached to that, and the theories and the aesthetics of each individual artist juxtaposed to each other, and how can those juxtapositions challenge the definitions of each individual work, how it can say something completely different. So that's maybe where I say it's a ready-made, because where my place comes in, I'm not just presenting 10 artists, I'm creating a narrative for the public to experience.
Like a way in, yeah?
Yeah. Or like, I also organize a lot of screening programs as well, where, video art's a challenging thing for a lot of people to view, and most of the time you see it, in more installation type settings, not a cinema setting. Contemporary video art is not so much about film.
Yeah, well, here's my next question. You've gone right there, which is, what matters. I'll say it as it is. What matters to you in any conversation about art and technology, with regard to video art, which is a technological form? So, what matters?
I was thinking about this question in your email, and I think there's two sides to the coin, where one side is content. What is the content? What is the artist trying to say? What am I trying to say? And then there's the aesthetics of it, and how are you presenting it to that public, or to your concept? I mean, in a way, that's one of the most challenging questions to making art, period. What is it for? What is it, and why is it? And
yeah, I'm sorry to lay the heavy one on you.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I mean, I think more. It's like I'm happy to have to think about it.
Well, the next one's going to be tough, because I've got to ask you what you, and this is one you might want to throw right back at me, but I'm going to throw it at you first, which is in relation to all of that context that we've basically just laid out, is what is digitality, or what is the digital, or what do you feel it means in relation to the analog, say?
Well, it's as I said earlier, I'm like, what is your definition? I think it's relative to there is no standard definition for that. There's the technical definition of digital or digitality. I mean, I think digitality comes more into this kind of the philosophy of new media, but you know, and then that concept of analog can be broken down into a number of different. I mean, I'm a painter primarily. I mean, that's the ultimate analog act, to use your hand. You know, it's like, whereas then there's that zone of electronic, you know, where, you know, if the like offline systems and linear systems, whereas now it's this, you know, completely non-linear. And
I mean, do you see this all kind of circling around materiality? You said the ultimate analog acts in terms, because you've got a material with painting. There's a perception, certainly amongst, I can't speak about, maybe American academics as well as British academics, that the whole of digital arena is immaterial. I mean, what do you feel about that?
It possesses that quality, yes, but not in the whole. I mean, it's not an object per se. The actual file, you could say, is ones and zeros.
It's all right.
Sorry about that. But then the presentation of it can become a physical incarnation, not as much in video, but in sculpture and 3D technology, whereas you can render an object in a very whatever 3D program and send it to the shop, and they can reproduce it in pretty much whatever material you'd like.
Yeah.
Plastic, wood, you know, and they can, and it's perfect down to the last detail of that file. So I mean, it's in a way, it's just another tool.
I had a really convincing argument from a guy called Mitch Gross, who's at Able Cinetech, and his line was that actually he refutes the immaterial argument on the basis that there's an attitude from film academics that film is a medium simply because it has a medium in which certain of the data is inscribed, not data, but certain of the information is inscribed in, right? But that actually, truthfully, when a film sits on a shelf, it's just a reference to an experience. And actually, therefore, the experience is the thing. Now, you could argue, equally, that the digitality and a set of noughts and ones is a referencing to an experience. So, if the digital is immaterial, so therefore the film is immaterial as well. What would you feel about that?
You know, to take it more into to discussing it as an object, whereas film, or there is the master. You know, whether it's in photography or cinematic filmmaking, there does only exist one. You know, and Woody and Steinem pointed that out in your interview with them, and the digital file possesses this ability to bypass, now with the internet and as we're taking wireless technology, I mean, you can pass this file from one machine to the other. You can pass it from one country to the other, bypassing all borders, bypassing taxes. You know, if like last big show I curated was in Moscow, had that been a painting show, it would have never happened. But it was a video, 100% video exhibition, whereas I came with a hard drive, all the files were backed up on my server. You know, so even if they would have somehow taken my hard drive, or it got stolen, or it got broken, I could still download those files and burn them to disk and put them on the equipment. So it was just a matter of them getting the equipment necessary for the exhibition. But I mean, had it been some sort of object-based exhibition, I mean, it would have been thousands and thousands of dollars just in, kind of import tax of these valuable high art objects.
So what you've highlighted there is the ability to reconstitute things. As if digitality has one of its functions is to be able to put something back together, to reassemble and to deassemble it in a way that maybe the analog could never do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah?
I mean, you can look at it, whereas analog had broadcast television. That is, and so NBC would send out their nightly evening news to all their affiliates. So they were sending that, whatever they were filming in analog video, they were still they weren't mailing a tape every night, and but I think it's gotten to the point where anyone with a simple cell phone nowadays can shoot a video. It might not be high definition, but that technology is, the curve on that is moving along quite quickly, in my opinion. And within, you shoot a 30-second clip on the corner here in Harlem, and 2 minutes later it's posted to YouTube and tagged out, and people are going to it and seeing it, and maybe even downloading it and remixing it, and I think it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
That we're in this, the ability to transfer information from one place to the other affordably and efficiently.
So that in a sense that set of functions you talked about are also a description of what the digital is. Because you remember Lev Manovich's thing on the operations? Operation 1 is, I can't even remember these, but something like, gather and steal from the web, reconstitute and publish, that stuff. Mm-hmm. Where what we're trying to deal with, this thing that we don't quite know what it is yet, we've got to, we find a set of metaphors to talk about it with. And one of those, I've got to get onto the thorny issue now, of high definition and high resolution, as opposed to the limitations of what the analog did to us via the fact that we had glass tubes that were vacuum, they had no air in them, they could only make them to a certain size, and they had to scan electron guns and all that stuff, which limited us to this small space. But here we are suddenly, finally, with the ability to up the resolution. Do you think there's any kind of, do you think high resolution is anything other than one of the functions of digitality? Has it anything in it that's worth looking at?
I mean, I think it goes into, as they keep, there's this image that I saw on Wikipedia a long time ago, like right when, I think it was Wikipedia or some other website, and it showed all the different various states, resolutions proceeding through super high def, and it makes 1080 or 720 to the old 640 480. I mean, it's a jump, it's a double, it's a tripling. But then as you look at this technology that is currently being used and being developed, it makes SD look like a postage stamp. And so there is something to this, the clarity of life, whereas looking at a show or a movie in 640 480, a rented tape, VHS tape, or a DVD of an old movie, it doesn't compare. You can't compare going to the theater and watching a 35mm cut of Casablanca versus watching even a remastered version of some old, any film for that matter, but more particularly non-graphic, non-computer effect films, where it is pure cinema. Now with like Avatar, and that clarity really matters.
Is there anything other than clarity or sharpness about the high resolution image that comes to mind? I mean, it strikes me that some of the stuff around it is, we haven't quite got the words or the glimpse. We haven't quite glimpsed it fully yet. But can you think of any of the words to describe high def that's besides clarity, or can say something about its quality as a material?
I mean, I think it's going to keep. They're going to keep bringing it. The chips are going to get smaller, and the as the technology progresses, that science's ability to harness this. I think the things they will learn from this is the stage in the high definition side of things, their ability to break down kind of the RGB. I'm more interested in what's going to happen next, in that how could they apply high definition technology to virtual reality? How can they apply like high definition 3D into immersive spaces for people? I think that's where where you go into a space and you look around and you are in that location, and have the ability to move through, go for a walk through Alexanderplatz, and it's somehow they've somehow they figured out how to mimic what's there, but I think right now, if most high definition art that I see, or the high definition work that I'm currently pursuing is I almost joke, and it's like they're video postcards. They're these they're very much about kind of reality, whereas kind of I look back into my early work in the 90s, where we were all so limited by the technology. Yet we could still hook up a camera to a Mac and record it, and there wasn't this preciousness of film. I mean, to shoot even an 8mm film. 10 minutes of 8mm, go get that developed, and did it even come out? Did you spend your whole day running around with your friends, and then you go like, oh, and you kind of give in to the aesthetic of the flaw within experimental filmmaking? But then even as you go into to video, in the earlier days, you still had to give in to the flaws, even if you were working in on a Media 100 system in the mid 90s. It wasn't perfect, but it was only standard def, so the quality and the clarity wasn't really an issue. I for a while I loved shrinking videos down, like kind of reducing them and then bringing them back up, and the patterns, the grid work patterns that would form. And now it's funny, I'm noticing it again, as with all the watch a standard def program, even up-resed into 1080, it kind of looks like crap. But video art doesn't. There's this difference. It's one thing about watching the nightly evening news to watching an experimental film, where the digital artifacts, or just that data just isn't there. And I imagine with even just the technology of an up-res system, somehow they're taking that pixel and modulating it to create to anti-alias that area and create an average around it. It's quite incredible.
I find this really interesting, and actually it's quite exciting. The way the phrase "to give into" the not the problems of a medium, but the things that, I mean, for artists, one of the greatest things that we have is when you see one of those problem areas, because one of those problem areas allows things you hadn't even imagined, so you can get in there and do stuff. And I'm just wondering if, like for instance, I was going to ask, you know, in your use of HD, has it enhanced your work in any way, over and above or different from the analog? In other words, does the digital at a higher resolution have a different working practice, or a different aesthetic, or a different gaps you can squeeze through? What's happening with this new stuff?
You know, I found that I don't need, and maybe it has nothing to do with high definition per se. Maybe it's just the way I'm more thinking about image making. But I've found, you know, the cheap and cheesy effects are no longer as necessary as they were before. You know, and maybe that, you know, really trying to think through the, you know, it's like, well, why am I doing these, you know, postcards? Why, you know, and then you know, maybe in the future I will go back in and, you know, I can, you know, animate some sort of 3D UFO over the field, but that's relative to what it is now. I mean, I think the most important thing about, you know, filmmaking or video making, however you want to, image making, is, you know, what are you shooting? What are you trying to say?
But you're arguing, well, if I understand it correctly, not arguing, the point, if I understand you correctly, is that there's something about the not having to give in to the faults in the medium that is actually quite pleasing and got a relief in it, in that you can just let things speak for themselves, or not that anything ever speaks for itself, but there's some kind of relaxed thing towards the way the world is represented. Is that happening, or?
To a certain degree. To a certain degree, I think. I think if anything, technology has gotten us to a place where, I don't want to say the novelty is wearing off, but it's gotten to a place where we are not as limited. There's the resolution that's been achieved to see the pores on the face of a person in the video versus the slight blur, you know, that went over everything, whether it's in projection or on a, you know, on a standard television. I think high definition, the visual experience of high definition, they don't really need to take it much further. You know, like the eye can only perceive so much detail.
Right.
I think where it might be interesting, you know, with, you know, I mean, what's the super high def, the highest, it's like 10 times of what even 1080 is.
Yeah.
So maybe it's, you know, that comes into play with interactive television, or how can you, you know, that kind of, you know, take advantage of the panoramic qualities of super high def, whereas with standard def or, you know, existing high definition, you know, you're watching it. It's functioning as, you know, I like to think, you know, where original, you know, the television, the box, you know, this kind of sculptural object, kind of altar, has now been moved from that sculptural space and now has been put into painting space.
Oh,
the
okay.
wall, the frame, that you know, early, you know, the television just didn't
Okay, let's try and dig a little deeper in there, because I think that's a really interesting insight, and I don't think I've heard anybody really talk about that, because we always had the box in the corner, because it was a thing, wasn't it? There it is in the corner, and one of the problems was there it is in the corner. Whereas with this stuff, there's this possibility that we can wash the world around us in images, if you know what I mean. Is that the kind of thing you mean by the sculptural, in that we can upend it and turn it on its side and generate surfaces, and is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
The whole idea of the surface. Well, I think, I was talking with somebody last week slightly about this, where I was saying, and I'm not much of a sculptor, as if I looked across my career as an artist, but I always consider, you stack the boxes, how many TVs can we get, how many Sony displays, the ones with the handles, and you can stack those into piles, it's like, we got 10 of them, and and so they become seating in a way, within a space. And there's now with LCD and plasma and LED screens, I mean, it's going to be this type of thing that you just slap up on the wall, and there'll be a wire coming out of the corner of it. They're almost to that place now, and video fabrics, and so that concept of it becoming like this fabric, becoming like the canvas, is this interesting thing to contemplate. And then, and for me, as I do consider myself primarily a painter, and I think video is more about painting than photography is about painting. I think photography is about filmmaking. There's a strange kind of, maybe I'm wrong, but so now that it has finally landed into painting space, and that you can put whatever you want on it. It's gone from this more grounded box to elevated window. The old TV was never really a window. It was, but it wasn't. Now, you can have I know interior designers that use flat screens as architectural, to brighten up a room, just psychologically for people. And for instance, we just did a large, last year actually, my dealer Janet O in Korea, she helped organize a very large immersive video corridor at the Kempo International Airport outside of Seoul, and it's 96 two columns of 96 monitors, 40-inch art wall monitors, and all the videos are having to deal with nature. But so you walk through there, and you are in a space. You're getting off this plane, and you've arrived to go get your luggage, and you're walking through this corridor. And the way it's laid out kind of like a barcode. A project called Video Forest, and I worked on it with this other Korean artist, Bo Kim Sung. And so through some of the pieces, like you're in Grand Central Station, you're on the playa in New Mexico, and then a couple of the other artists, there's 5 of us in total, you're in this abstract space place as you walk through, and it does evoke this, I think, where high definition, it's going to get to the point where it can trick the brain. Maybe, although briefly, but and it's going to stir up emotions, like the ability of immersive technology. I think that kind of, is it a hallucination, or are you, how?
So you're inferring, because this is interesting, because you know, the whole thing about film was you go into a dark space, you sit down with a group of people, and there's a group agreement to suspend disbelief. But you're implying, is it inferring? You're inferring that inside digitality, and especially high-res images, that's going to happen even if you're moving, or by the space itself that the artist engages in. They can make the public suspend disbelief in the space that they're in. Is that just in a part?
Well, and it becomes integrated within their kind of peripheral subconscious as well. You know, whereas with cinema, or even most video art, it's you know, or most art in general, it's pretty egotistical. It's pretty much, I made this, and I am commanding you. You know, if you want to experience it, you got to sit in the seat. You can leave if you want, but it's going to be, you know, it is what it is. You know, you're watching it, and you know, it's very much referencing theater of the days of old. You know, so it's a.
Do you think this also leads to a challenging... I've got one here for you. This is another one that's been perturbing me a bit, which is my grasp of the domain, the control of contemporary curators who are brought up on, effectively, as far as I understand it, the thoughts of the Frankfurt School when they left Frankfurt in 37, 38, came to New York, met with American minds and looked at the notion of interpretation. So you've got like modern art, contemporary art, and contemporary art environments where you have to go in and you've got to do some work, you've got to do some interpretation of this thing to get something out of it, which I think is personally might just be of an age gone by. Whereas with digitality, there seems to be a different function in the way that the artist addresses the audience. I mean, do you agree or disagree, or?
Well, I think people aren't as afraid to touch anymore. You know, they're used to, you know, this whole revolution over the past few years with multi-gestural touchscreens and the iPhone and now the iPad, and you know, it's gone beyond the remote. You know, that you can actually touch the image and interact with it. It's quite liberating for people. One of my projects is called Perpetual Art Machine, and we used Max MSP Jitter to create a touchscreen interface for people to choose video art from an archive. It's grown to well over 1,000 artists, and there's thousands of pieces in this archive. And but it's, you know, we kind of threw our own spin on it, where it's like it's not a linear, so there's no linear search. An artist can't go there with their mom and do a drop down and say, I'm showing you my video, mom. It's more about people going and discovering, and we included artists in that mix too, to discover. This isn't a tool, this isn't a marketing tool for art, and that's something, you know, we haven't really spoke about in reference to 21st century art making. But I mean, that's something that strongly, you know, you got the money to shoot professionally, the quality sometimes can help you push it forward. You know, if you can go to an art, you know, some gallerist and say, like, look, you know, I've got the best equipment and I've used the best equipment and it's not going to cost you a penny. You know, they don't say no, but it's like this, you know, it's not completely necessary to engage that. I don't know. I think it's one of those places where I started to ramble off.
No. You see, you keep saying things anyway that I can hear the resonance in the one that got me there was the notion of professionalism, because we've been through a whole phase where, you know, in prior periods, the artist has had to be an artisan as well, so they've had to know their paint, they've had to know, you know, all that stuff. And then we went through video art, where there was quite a lot of pleasure and innovation out of the haphazard, non-craft-based relationship to the medium. But now, once we get up to, here we go, you know, cameras like the Red, there's got to be it has to be addressed in a particular kind of way, which you use the word professional. So I'm kind of interested in that whole space about how the artist deals. Actually, what it means in a certain kind of way is that the artist has to let go of the reins and actually hand them, or at least see through somebody else's eyes and mind sometimes to get to what they need to get to. What do you feel about that?
Or teach yourself how to use it.
Or
I mean, I look at it like, you know, kind of when the Canon XL1 came out in, what was that, 95? Something like that. I mean, and that was a revolution. I mean, I was never much of a filmmaker. Never took any filmmaking classes in school. It was all new media and video, and I just always thought about the reels of Super 8 and the one little couple chunks of 16 I did. I was always just kind of like, wow, I would have done it differently. The lighting, you know, I was always criticizing kind of the results I was getting, and just kind of rolling with it. It was fine, but you know, I was like, okay, I'm not a pro. And that's where I could look at it as like, well, if I went out the day I make my movie, I'm going to make sure I have the right people to do this with. And you know, and I think with as I started, you know, realize the ease of DV, you know, over Super 8, and just the quality jump, you know, that jump to 720 made a huge difference, I think, in the quality of work, and then the quality lenses as well. Like all of a sudden, like you could use, you know, a professional. You'd had access to a professional lens, but even at that time, I mean, that was an expensive camera. I mean, we rented it, yeah, for $100 a day or something like that, and you know, now, you know, the Panasonic camera I have, you know, nice 3-chip. AG30, you know, nothing fancy, but that, you know, I don't really use it that much anymore over my Nikon D90 or, you know, cameras that I borrow from friends to do special shoots.
So there's some way in which we've got the means of production more readily to hand, closer to the levels of, inverted commas, professionalism. So we've come up in terms of access.
In terms of access, yeah, well, you could say in terms of access, it's the public has access to video technology. I mean, you know, I could say my generation did we have a camera in the house when I was a kid? I forget how old I was when we got, you know, our first like VHS cam, but you know, in the 80s, you know, so it's like, you know, to have that in the house, and now it's commonplace. You know, with the advent of YouTube, and I mean, now to be able to put high def video onto this public portal, it is absolutely incredible. It gives, you know, on another level, even as an artist in Africa or in Asia or in the middle of the United States, they could put something up on there and it can become a phenomenon. But to take it to the other level, it's like, okay, the artist can put something up on there and they might be even semi-well recognized as, you know, museum level artists. Yeah, but they still, you know, the hits trickle in, the views. But then somebody that is not an artist, that you know, is a teenager in Iowa, they can make a video that is dumber, you know, it's just this kind of stupid thing, and millions upon millions of people can view it. And there's absolutely zero professionalism in that one that the public consumes, whereas the person who by trade you'd say was a professional, nobody wants to see it.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting dichotomy, and I've gotten into arguments with a number of people over the fact of that is art. There is something about the fact that there's something about the aesthetics that person chose, probably subconsciously, from just experiencing media for their entire life.
Yeah.
Being immersed in new media, whereas I was only partially immersed as a child, whereas you kind of came into it, as, a young adult, and you keep going back and you look at somebody that's 90 years old now, or even like Woody and Steinert, where it sucks to have to keep relearning, but
But that does challenge Duchamp's proposition of, what I've held to for a very long time is the notion that what he came along and did and said, the artist now chooses what is art. No patrons. The artist chooses. And the thing is the argument against the product of somebody who's not intent on the art is that they're not making the gesture of the intent of art. It might be default art on certain levels, but they're not making that choice. So I guess I'm old-fashioned in holding to the Duchamps.
No, but in a way, it's like it goes into that the I agree in that the person that's shooting the cat playing the piano isn't so much filming it because it's art. They're filming it because it's cute and funny and stupid, and they're going to send it to their sister or their brother or their mom or their friends, and their friends are going to laugh. And but then you can take that cat playing the piano to and reference that to as ready-made to Corey Archangel, who I think reference to this kind of digital avant-garde. He's kind of poked fun at it in a almost Dada, contemporary Dada sense, in that he took that cat playing the piano and then kind of remixed it to Schoenberg Symphony. I can't remember exactly which symphony he
he's made a
juxtaposed
juxtaposition
to it.
Yeah.
And but it wasn't, it was what the cat was playing. It was just this abstract composition.
I get the point.
And so that's art. So Corey Archangel took that ready-made video and now all of a sudden, and one of the most viral videos on the web, in fact, and made it his own. Now he's showing that in museums. And then to take my curatorial philosophy around, then I, even though I have never curated Corey, then to take that in. So how is it, how is that media, with appropriation and assimilation of images, it's an interesting and fluid conversation.
No, I really I respect and take the point of that whole thing. It does cross my mind though that the strategies of functions of generation or notating art as such are about close to a century old in terms of, so we're still functioning on a set of gestures made almost 100 years ago when they evolved these strategies, and here we are still with them. And this leads into my next question, which is I'll lay out a thing for you to respond to, just so that we're on the same page. In the notions of remediation, in other words, as far as I understand it, I'll put it as far as I understand it and then give it to you to play with. In that photography came in at its point of history, and the early adopters utilised it to do what painters had done prior to this, like still lifes and stuff like that. Do you think, given that with the incoming, again I use this word digitality, do you think we are remediating or not yet letting this medium or whatever it is be the thing that it truly is, and can we actually see what it is yet, or have we got time to go? Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No. It's my gut says that the old guard hasn't. There's still a very strong presence of the old guard and they don't want to give up their authority easily. You say that about, in academia. You say that in politics. When there is a new avant-garde, which I think we've got something going on. I mean, I think there's something happening in culture that goes beyond the standard postmodern dialogue. I think there's is it supermodernism? Are we in that era? I mean, that's the closest definition to what we're in right now, but it seems to only be applied to architecture, fashion, and design, but not contemporary art. And that's something that I've been kind of throwing out there and seeing. But the treatment for media seems to be like a regurgitation of totally overdone postmodern theories, of the late '90s. Like almost like we got to, was there something that happened, in the early '90s that there was something about that it flatlined.
Yeah. And
technology wasn't totally addressed within that. There was just like, oh, this is a new tool to, there was this kind of, it's a new brush, but it's not making anything new, which I always found that problematic. I'm like, well, time is one thing that always makes something new. We can, you look at what's at MoMA right now with the Maria Abramovic installation, her retrospective of all her famous performances, with live actors. And is it the same performance? Well, yeah, but no, because that performance was done and thought about in a certain time in 1980 and 1970, whenever those various things were done, and there was something in the social environment that caused her to make that. Now, how do they apply today? You can always reapply and readapt strategies, but I think really with new media and more importantly, immersive technologies and maybe VR and various interactive technologies, that it can go beyond what has previously been done before. Are we still kind of caught up or bogged down? Maybe is what, the technology is progressing so quickly that it's hard for, somebody chooses to get in and it's hard to keep up. I never went into 3D because I was having a hard enough time keeping up with After Effects, and then the web came about, and then I realized, well, to have a job in film and media, I'd have to go into the office, whereas with the web, I could work at home on my computer, whereas I wasn't limited by the location of the equipment.
I mean, it's certainly a kind of... we got a playwright called Howard Barker, who is kind of... he's Brecht on steroids. His line is basically, who are we to imitate God? In other words, to represent to an audience an aspects of the world is a ridiculous position to take. But here we are as artists since the caves. We've been drawing on walls and saying, "Hey guys, look at what I did."
It's actually, well, I think it goes beyond that, because you could say that and it's actually not discussed enough, I don't think, in art history in general. But that was the initial mark of humankind's kind of I am moment. And I was there. The tag. You know, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
original graffiti. But then to go take it to another, if you know the early Cro-Magnon cave paintings and the Aboriginal rock paintings in Australia, which they say could be more than 30,000 years old, which totally throws any sort of concept of that maybe even humanity is older than the marks that have been left. Those people that were making those marks weren't just doing it for the fun of it. They were the ultimate maestro. They were the shaman. They were the leaders of their tribes. You know, they were touched. They were enlightened by the gods, or however you want to interpret that. And then you take it. You go up another. Let's move up 10,000 years, and the place of an artist in Greek or Roman society or Egyptian society. They were praised artisans for what they could mimic reality, basically. And then you go, as you go up through time, you have this, the artist as maestro, as genius, as unique creator, so to speak, inspired possibly by God. The hand of God. But now we're in this place, and I think I've noticed some artists are very frustrated by that concept of Corey Archangel using the cat, where it's like that is not art. But in a Dada sense, it totally is. It is. As soon as I say it's art,
Totally.
Or any of us say now the content of that appropriation and the reasoning, and that's what can be critiqued. Sure, it's art, but now the playing field is, you look at some of these kids online that are making these programs, and they're so weird and they're so cool, and they're just doing it out of boredom. But we're so immersed in this technology that you don't have to be an art. I think it goes back to that intent.
Is it worrying? Do you think it's worrying that the progress of technology is such that the imitation of the world, for instance, we talk about caves, we talk about the way that we got a bunch of senses, and we seem to be imitating the senses in our delivery of the world to ourselves. In video environments, smell environments, sound environments, taste environments, touch, all of that stuff. I mean, do you think this is just a momentary we're kind of doing this because we're just pushing the technology, or is it a valid place to go?
I think culture in general is finally, you don't have to go back very far, 20 years, maybe even saying, 30 years, where this technology very, very rapidly, the general public, humanity has been learning about itself firsthand in mass. Whereas prior to that, we relied ultimately on the specialist, on the maestro, on the shaman. We trusted that their informed opinion was better than what our own could be. And I think now it's easier for the average person to go seek out on their own what the way they want to interpret it, or see who their shaman is, or I like this art but I don't like that art, and they might not even know why.
Well, you know what? I think that's a really good place to leave it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.